I'm indeed honored to be part of today's event and to be invited to participate in Ghana Structural Vulnerability Mitigation Strategy, which is shortened CSVMS. It's a mouthful. Permit me at the outset to convey on behalf of the President of our Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, his warm fraternal greetings and best wishes for the success of this working event, which the government considers very critical to the well-being and development of our people. I would also like to thank the Interministerial Committee not only for taking us through the country's structural vulnerability and resilience assessment, CSVRA, and the country's structural vulnerability mitigation strategy, CSVMS, but also for organizing this consultation workshop to really identify and work out on the way forward. The technicians who will be working at the details must indeed do an accurate work, and here I'm emphasizing accuracy. See, I always say that 3 new tires are no use to a vehicle. The vehicle may better do with 4 second-hand tires, because it needs 4 tires to move. So that if you are here to do the analysis of the cost of this identification and analysis, we must be reasonably accurate. Because if we need 100 and you prescribe 30, the work cannot be done. If we need 100 and you prescribe 120, the work can be done. So it's better under these circumstances to slightly overestimate than to seriously underestimate. The work to be done will depend on the work you are doing here, the technical group. Please give us the accurate cost of events, so that based on this, we can come out with implementable program, because it is well founded. And I'm happy that the African Development Bank is here with us. And I hope when it comes to funding, they'll be generous with us. We would not have come this far without the support of our development partners, such as UNDP, GIZ, who have worked with us on this matter assiduously and with dedication. Therefore, I would like to seize this opportunity to commend all who have contributed to this work, including the Ministry of National Security, which spearheaded the assessment process, and the experts from the African Union, ECOWAS, and the Ghana Mission in Addis Ababa, as well as the Research Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for really engaging in detail to make sure that we get these things done. We have other institutions like Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, KIPTC, the National Peace Council, NPC, the Ghana Africa Peer Review Mechanism, Governing Council, and the West Africa Network for Peace Building, for their invaluable contribution to this work so far. Distinguished participants, Ghana went through the CSVRA process, being the first country in Africa to do so, and it was a volunteer that we did, because efforts to socio-economic advancement hinges on the maintenance of peace and security in the country. Evidence-based approach in identifying structural weaknesses that could make us susceptible to violent conflicts, fashioning out strategies to nip the triggers of such conflicts in the bud, and strengthening resilience structures in the country where, therefore, issues that need careful attention for our well-being and prosperity. Prevention is always better than cure. We say it and say it very often. When it comes to conflicts, prevention is more than better than cure. Because when conflicts do happen, and there's a full-blown conflict, intra-conflict within the same country or between countries, to cure is difficult and expensive. And the true sources of conflicts which affect us abound in all African countries: poverty and youth unemployment. These two are major insecurity instruments for conflict, and we have to contend with them. We have to find a solution to poverty, this extreme form. We have to find a solution to unemployment in our respective countries and on the continent. Having gone through the process successfully, our task at the stage is to ensure that we put in place an effective mechanism that will ensure the implementation and recommendations of the country's structural vulnerability and resilience assessment and the country's structural vulnerability mitigation strategy. Having identified, you must put in place structures which the Honorable Minister for National Security itemized some institutions we have in Ghana which you really mitigate these things. You don't have to wait until there's a blown up. You've got to have certain institutions, that the Peace Council, to quickly call them to the relevant places to mitigate the matter. Honorable Ministers and distinguished participants, our achievement as the first country in Africa to have completed the CSVRA process is commendable, since it has become a trailblazing event that has so far attracted other countries on the continent to follow our footsteps. But what is more creditable for Ghana and the continent is to demonstrate effective and efficient implementation of the CSVRA and the CSVMS for them to attain their purpose. Distinguished participants, for the CSVRA, CSVMS report, the assessment process culminated in the identification of 7 vulnerabilities along the thematic areas outlined under the continental structural conflict. And with your permission, I name them specifically. Number 1 on the list is socio-economic development. Number 2 is good governance, the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. Number 3, the security sector, the architecture for security. And we thank Honorable Kandapa for superintending this very effectively the last 6 years or so. Environment and climate change. We have often looked at this as academic, but it isn't. It isn't, because the effect of climate change on our agriculture, the effect of climate change on many socioeconomic things is creating a problem. People could not imagine that we could have serious flooding in New York. The city was designed anti-flooding, but it did happen. And seriously, you can imagine being in a tube underground and there is flooding. So this climate change matter is not really academic, it's a reality. Flooding in Germany all over, crossing to other European capitals. In our own countries, here in Ghana, when it rains heavily and you sleep in Accra, you are nervous because you wake up the following morning and hear stories of people who have been drowned, of buildings which have collapsed. So some of these climate matters we must take more seriously than we. It's not academic, a reality. Gender and youth. Inclusiveness is relevant. And this is where most countries now have ministry for gender, specific, so that certain problems are identified and find solutions to them. Diagnosis is necessary for cure. If you don't diagnose a disease, how do you cure it? It will be pure try and error, and that should not be the case. You must diagnose it as malaria and go straight for malaria treatment. Then you are solving a problem. Post-conflict peace building is also necessary. Conflicts we can never prevent, no matter what. There will by all means be conflicts. They come up in towns, villages, cities, everywhere. And when you get them sorted out, what you do after to ensure the avoidance of other future effects is relevant, because conflict came because of certain misunderstandings, and you want to cure this right from the beginning. Transitional justice and reconciliation. When you are able to reconcile people, we have different backgrounds, we come from different tribes, we have male and female, we have different ages, my hair is white, yours is black. All these are sources of misunderstanding. Sometimes some of us don't understand the youth. It's the age gap. It's bound to happen. What they are looking at today, the social media, the sort of things they are going through, we never had the chance to go through those. And therefore, their whole psychic thinking is different from ours. Therefore, you begin to even have problems with your children and grandchildren because of the conclusions they draw to things. It is the orientation. It is the age gap. And you must resolve it. You have to resolve it with reconciliation, with understanding. The assessment report described Ghana's legal and institutional framework as solid and resilient, capable of preventing and managing conflicts. Nonetheless, it identifies the need to address a rising socioeconomic inequality across the country, including the limited inclusion of women, youth, and vulnerable populations, as well as environmental and climate-related challenges wherever they occur. You would find out that areas in this country are developing very fast. Other areas are not being touched by development. And therefore, decentralization becomes very important. The creation of new regions, to me, is relevant because it brings administration closer to the people. And once you create a region, the region must have regional directorate for education, regional directorate for health, regional directorate for sanitation, regional directorate for everything, as you have in the older regions like Greater Accra, Ashanti, etc. Decentralization is key because you then bring development closer to the people, and administration is felt by all. Inclusiveness is relevant as a way of solving problems. In this regard, therefore, upon submission of the assessment report to His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of this Republic, he immediately established, as had been mentioned by other speakers, an interministerial committee made up of the following, and it's important to listen to these key ministers. The interministerial committee was made up of the Minister for National Security, Minister for Finance, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Minister for Justice and Attorney General, Minister for Interior, Minister for Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, under the chairmanship of the then Senior Minister, my good self. And we went through these, and these ministers naturally are ministers with gravitas. Therefore, when you are discussing matters, people come in with authority to speak on specific sector problems. And I'm happy to say that we enjoyed our discussions. We couldn't go far, and we had the COVID-19 pandemic derailing our operations. In fact, this meeting, which we are holding today, should have been held 2 years ago. And therefore, we are minimum 2 years behind schedule. And I'm therefore appealing to the technical committee to bear that in mind. And now that we seem to have some control over the COVID-19 in a way, At least if we go by the stated protocols, we minimize the effect, and it's not so frightening as when it started. So please bear that in mind. We now have to change the norm for our living to ensure that we can get things done and done quickly. Our objective of gathering here today, among others, is to identify and endorse priority areas, activities, and estimated budget for implementation by relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. We should also set a date for partners meeting to mobilize requisite technical and financial resources to implement the Ghana's country structural vulnerability mitigation strategy. And as I said, you are going to look at figures, you are going to work at a budget, and you must be reasonably accurate. If you have been Minister of Finance before and you under budget for an event and it comes to implementation, you curse yourself because you can't get it done. As I said, 3 new ties are no use to a vehicle. You either have 4 or nothing. So please, technicians, looking at the heads in this room, looking at the experiences which have been gathered here, I am confident that you come out with a budget that will resolve the matters beyond doubt. Distinguished participants, you have an enormous task ahead, and I am sure you are equal to the task. In your deliberations, be guided by the fact that youth unemployment continues to be a major source of concern for major governments on our continent, and Ghana is not an exception, as captured in the CSVRA and CSVMS report. We read the report, they had 2 good chapters on this, and it is scary, but that's the reality. Equipping the youth with employable skills, expanding technical vocational education, and promoting entrepreneurship program will reduce their vulnerability to exploitation, manipulation, radicalization, and engagement by criminal gangs and extremists. By so doing, we can reduce conflicts and silence the gun by the 2030, as aspired by the African Union. We always say that the devil employs the idle hands for its work. The devil's work cannot be a positive work, obviously. And therefore, unemployment continues to be a major source of problem for every country. As stated earlier, the setting up of this interministerial implementation committee is ample demonstration of the readiness of the government of Ghana to implement the recommendations contained in the CSVRA, CSVMS report. We therefore encourage all our partners and stakeholders to accompany us in this direction. May all your deliberations be crowned with actionable and implementable recommendations on the way forward. You yourself must be sure that the final crossing the T's and dotting the I's are implementable. So I don't say things on theory, things that can be implemented and have been well funded to put money for it. For our safety, I would like to remind all of us to keep observing the COVID-19 protocols. In doing so, let our brothers and sisters from AU and ECOWAS, as much as possible, find time to enjoy the proverbial Ghanaian hospitality with caution because of the COVID-19. On this note, I have the singular honor to declare the Interministerial African Union ECOWAS consultation workshop on implementation of Ghana's country structural vulnerability mitigation strategy duly and officially open. Thank you very much.